welcome everybody. Thank you so very much indeed for giving up an evening, or at least part of an evening, to be with us together, to share together this evening. I often think that treasuring the treasurers is a hugely important thing for us to do. I'm going to just begin with a brief prayer and a reflection for a few moments before we get into the meat of the evening's sessions. So this is what's happening this evening. You can read that for yourself. So it's partly about updating on the finances and the parish offer. Really important that we hear from each other and share our experiences. We'll be considering stewardship in the midst of this pandemic. And then there is going to be an exciting announcement. So do please stay around for that. It's going to be a really good evening. And I hope everyone will get quite a lot out of this. But as I said, I'm just going to offer a prayer and a short reflection before we get into the course of the evening. So let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this gift of time that you've given to us, this opportunity for us to meet, to share together, to think. We thank you for all those who have offered to share a ministry as being a treasurer in a parish. We thank you for all that they bring to their various parishes, for their enthusiasm, their care and their diligence. So Lord, we ask for your Holy Spirit to be present with us this evening. In Jesus' name, amen. Yes, in this diocese, we always try, as you know, to instill a generous mindset to each other and a generosity of heart to our congregations, a generosity with our ecumenical partners, a generosity to our faith partners in the parishes in which we serve, and also, and really importantly, a spirit of generosity when it comes to finances. Generosity of spirit, particularly with finances, seems to me to be key. And that text, which you may want to hold on to this evening, Luke 6, verse 38, where Jesus said this, didn't he? He said, "Give, and it will be given back to you." But he said, "It will be given back to you in good measure, pressed down and flowing over." Therein is that sense of generosity. When we are generous, God is somehow generous in return. Give, and it will be given back to you. Not just what you've given, but it'll be given back to you in good measure, pressed down and flowing over. Martin Luther famously said, didn't he, that there are 3 conversions for a Christian to go through. First, the conversion of the heart, then the conversion of the mind, and finally the conversion of the wallet. Now, speaking with treasurers, I know that you know the importance and the value of money. And money, finances, resources are at the centre of the scriptures, and church history tells us that money has always been a major theme of our faith, for good or sometimes for ill. Jesus, it could be said, spoke more about money than he actually did about love, in a direct sense, that is. 11 of his 39 parables Jesus tells are precisely about finances and money. Money, that word, is directly mentioned 800 times in the Bible. Finance, wealth, possessions are referenced over 2,000 times. Incidentally, there's nowhere in Scripture where debt is viewed in a positive way. Much more, the freedom from debt is part of the greater story of God. And that's why I think this theme of God being generous to us is so important, and us reflecting, and our churches particularly, for which we have responsibilities, and you do as treasurers, that spirit of generosity. Scripture points us to use money with a heart and mindset focused on this spirit of generosity, alongside, clearly, a practical outworking of good stewardship. Just want to share a few texts from Proverbs and Luke's Gospel and Paul's writing, which seems to me to sum up this theme of how we use money and use it, and that encouragement to use it with a spirit of generosity. These are from the Old Testament, the Gospels and New Testament. One person gives and gains even more. A generous person will prosper. Those who give will lack nothing. Jesus said, "Give and it will be given back to you in good measure." We've heard that already. And then again, in Paul's writing, "Be generous and willing to share. Thus you will lay up treasure for yourself in heaven." There's an old Norwegian proverb that says, "The hand that gives in generosity is never empty. Generosity is that key, a generosity of spirit as well as practical management. Money is so important because it reveals who we are as individuals and reveals who we are as churches. If you look at my bank statement, you will clearly see where my priorities are by where I spend my money. Once our life is over, and once the life of our church is over, it won't matter whether we've had a lot of money or a little. At the end of a game of chess, the king and the pawn go back into the same box. What matters at the end of the day is how we use the money we've been given by God. And my prayer is that we will always have a spirit of generosity when it comes to our money. I'm now going to hand over to the team who will introduce themselves in each session as we go forward.
Okay, I'll take the lead. My name's Rick Jakes, I'm the head of finance, and I'd just like to echo the welcome that you've already been offered from Dave and Lee. Before I start to present, though, we've just got a very short message from Bishop James, who was very keen to send you his best wishes and regards as well. So Dave, who's good at all the high-tech stuff, I'm hoping will be able to feed into Bishop James's video.
Good evening to you all, and thank you very much for providing me with this opportunity to address you briefly as part of your meeting with Rick and Anna about finance and stewardship. Now, obviously, you don't need me to fill you in on the financial details, and I wouldn't be very competent at doing that anyway. But what I can do is offer each of you my most heartfelt gratitude. The ministry you exercise as treasurers is absolutely invaluable, and I want you to know how hugely it's appreciated by all of us. We couldn't run this diocese without your skill and hard work, and that work, as everyone knows, has been even harder than usual this year, with the many restrictions and problems which have come in the wake of the COVID pandemic. So thank you, more than I can say, for your perseverance, for your good humour, for your commitment to Christ and his church, and for the long hours of dedicated effort you put in to resource and enable that church's mission. We don't take any of this for granted and are truly grateful for our partnership with every one of you in the gospel.
So, welcome. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We've tried really hard. We're not clashing with Bake Off. We're not clashing with Strictly. We're not clashing with the football. But I am assured that I must finish by 9 o'clock because I'm a celebrity. So we'll do our absolute best. I know we're in lockdown, but I'm sure there are other things you could have been doing tonight. And I apologise for those of you who wanted to go to the launch of or attend the virtual launch of the Kendall Film Festival. So apologies for that. This time last year, Sophie and I toured around the diocese with our pea and pie suppers. Quite a few of you were there. I know some of you couldn't make it. And we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves, not just because we got to eat pea and pies 4 times, but because it was fabulous to meet so many of you and just to share ideas and experiences, and for you to get a chance to meet each other and share experiences. We can't do that this year, obviously, but we wanted to do something. And so tonight we are going to try our very best to build on what we did last year, to update you on what's going on, to give you a chance to chat in small groups through the wonders of Zoom technology, and just to try and again, just have an evening of sharing experiences and learning some things. So we're going to do our best to make it interesting and just catch up with each other. So just to start with, we're going to, I'll give a really quick overview of some of the impacts of COVID. The biggest impact of coronavirus is on our lives, our families, our relationships, people, and where you are in that journey will be impacting you greatly in whatever way that is. It really has been a horrible year, hasn't it? And it's impacted so many parts of our lives. I won't dwell on the personal side of that tonight, although clearly that's the most important. But we will look at how that's affecting our church lives, and in particular, as treasurers, how that's affecting our financial situation. In your churches, in our churches, our buildings have been largely closed for worship. We've had a period where some of you have been able to get back into your churches for worship, and now that's stopped again. Funerals and weddings have been really impacted. Easter, gosh, that seems a long time ago, doesn't it? We weren't allowed to go to church for Easter. Harvest has come and gone with doing our best to celebrate that. Your PCC meetings, I don't know, maybe that's a blessing. Your PCC meetings have been a challenge, just to get together and do the important business that you have to do as a church. Your fundraising events, many of you benefit from tourists visiting your churches. But it's not just that, is it? It's the fellowship, it's the comfort, it's the looking after each other that goes on in our churches and outside our churches that we've really been missing this year, and that's really hurt us. That's been really tough, hasn't it? But we've seen loads of really good stuff as well going on in churches, caring for our communities. The church isn't the building. We love our buildings, but the church is the people and the way we display God's love to our community. So there's been some fantastic stuff. We've had some great and some interesting things going on Zoom and Facebook and everything. We've been all trying our best. But we've lived and learned this year, haven't we? For better and worse. It's been an experience. But it's really impacted your finances, and we know that. Cash and envelope collection, and in Cumbria we have a lot of that, so that's been hit hard. Your fundraising events have largely not happened this year, and the Christmas ones are probably not going to happen now. Those of you who have church hall income, many of you, I'm just up the road from Lanercost, who normally see an enormous number of people partying on Hadrian's Wall. They've not been here this year. Weddings and funerals again could be a source of money coming into the church. All of that has been massively curtailed, and not just that, our ability to keep in touch with our congregations in all aspects, but including financial. Some of us have dabbled with online giving. Can we get money coming into the churches in different ways? And Anna, in a little while, will look at stewardship and fundraising in the current climate in which we find ourselves. So coronavirus has impacted our finances at PCC level, at diocesan level, and nationally as well. Dave, if you can just go on to the next slide. Brilliant, thank you. The way in which coronavirus has impacted at a diocesan level, obviously a large proportion of our income comes in from your parishes to fund what we do. Way back in March, when we were all sent home, when we all went into lockdown, we could hardly imagine, could we, what the impact was going to be? How long was it going to last? What was it going to do to our churches, to our church finances? And to be honest, we still don't know for sure, do we? We know a lot more than we did back in March, but there's still a lot of uncertainty. Back then, we had enormous concern about what was going to happen. The potential for what could have been a really big fall in parish offer, as your income was massively impacted. We knew that we were going to get a lot less coming in through parochial fees. There was the potential for significant fall in rental income and investment income as economies were rocked around the world. And we knew that there would be a material impact on Rydal Hall and also the shops in Carlisle and Penrith. We didn't know what was going to happen, but we knew that something was going to happen in all those areas for the diocese as a result of what was going on. To give you a feel for what's actually happened, we're now in middle of November, so we're getting towards the end of the year. It has been bad, I won't lie, it's been pretty rough. And we've lost about £1.2 million worth of income at the diocese level. Some of that is income through Rydal Hall, something like £600,000 of lost visitor money in Rydal Hall. We now think we're going to lose something between £450,000 and £500,000 of parish offer that we would normally have expected to received by the end of the year. Parochial fees, we think, are going to be down about £140,000. The op shops had to close. Op shops, just so you know, are now actually a separate subsidiary, a separate charity on their own right. They were closed, and they're open. They're closed again, but they've obviously been badly hit. And our investment and other income, fortunately, seems to have held up reasonably well. So we feared that many of you will have, or certainly some of your PCCs will have, shares in the investment fund, or perhaps some of the other funds held by CCLA, Church Board of Finance Funds. The really good news is that they are holding up really well. We did a little bit of work to make sure that we were happy that CCLA were good people to use to invest with. That's who the Church of England nationally use, and I have to say, they've done a cracking job this year. They've done really well, so that's fantastic. So we have lost about £1.2 million worth of income, which for a charity that brings in about £8 million, that is a significant amount. What I'm happy to say is that we've done an awful lot to mitigate against that. I just want to talk through some of the things we've done, because we could have, in theory, just let it hit us. We've got £2 million worth of general reserves. We could have just taken it on the chin if 2020 was all that was going to happen. The trouble is, it's not, and it's going to go into next year, and we'll talk about that. In fact, it's going to go on for, the impact of this will hit us for a number of years, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I just want to talk to you about a few of the things we've done, because with over £1 million less to spend, we've had to do quite a bit to absorb that shock. We have furloughed a lot of staff. That wasn't an easy decision. In some places like Rider Hall, it was a fairly easy decision. No guests just means that the staff had nothing to do, and so that was relatively easy. But we've furloughed a lot of staff at Church House, and a lot of the staff on teams like the Reach team, for example, and that's not great, because it's ministry, it's work that's not happening as a result of being on furlough. It's been a challenge. We've been really stretched, and towards the end of the evening, I'll talk about some of the practicalities of what it means having Church House still closed for you as treasurers. Bridal Hall and op shops have been closed when they had to, and doing their best to trade when they were allowed to, in secure and safe ways, obviously. We've done a large cutback on the spend that we've done on repairs on clergy houses. So if we've actually taken a 1-year holiday on the vicarage quinquennial repair scheme, and any sort of improvements or capital work to the vicarages, we've just basically put on ice for a year. We can survive it. If it's your vicar's house, they might not like it, but it's something that we've had to do. A lot of discretionary project work has been paused over the summer, and again, that's had an impact on ministry. I don't say quite a lot of this with any relish, because we wouldn't want to have done any of this, but it's been important to do that. We've made as many savings where we can, as I'm sure you have in your PTCs. We've had staff and clergy salary sacrifice schemes in place, where people have generously given of their own salaries. Dave's reminding me to say, don't forget to put your questions in on chat. So thank you, Dave. I forgot to say that at the start, didn't I? If you think of any questions as I'm talking, feel free to type them into chat as we go. The one thing we did do very early in the year, we were very fortunate in that we sold a number of properties. Now, normally we would invest those immediately, because that creates an income for us, which helps pay for ministry and clergy, etc. We didn't invest that. We kept it as cash, because we didn't know what impact our cash flow was going to have. That was a very fortunate set of, or possibly divine set of timings, that we were in that position. But we lose income by not investing it, so there's a cost as well. We've liaised really closely with people like our tenants and CCLA, just to try and prop up the investment income, and the Bishops' Council and the Board of Finance set up a financial task force who looked at potential impacts, not just this year, but going forwards, what we needed to prioritise, what we needed to do to get through this storm as best we could. So we've been working hard to try and mitigate, as I'm sure you have in your PCCs, to try and steer our way through this with as little damage, as little harm as possible. We had to sort of give a summary, if you like. I think that the first thing I would say is it's been really, really tough for you as PCCs. We've done a bit of analysis based on the financial returns that come in every year from you. And we've looked at income that we perceive has probably not happened or has been severely dented this year with closed churches, fundraising, etc. We think you've lost 2 million, possibly even £2.5 million of income across the diocese. Now, if you remember, I said that Parish Offer was down something like, will be down something like £500,000. So what that actually means is that you are absorbing quite a lot of that lost income. Now, I suspect you haven't saved £2 million of costs because you probably couldn't. What that probably means is that your reserves, which have been rising a little bit over the years, have taken a bit of a pounding. Right at the start, we said reserves are there for a rainy day, and this is a rainy day. And I think we've all had to respond in that way at every level by eating into those reserves. That's not great because they help us get through, don't they? And it means we're not going to be as strong next year. But we think you've done that. And Derek Curtin, our Diocesan Secretary, was saying just yesterday in a big finance board meeting how impressed and pleased and proud he is of the way that PCCs have approached this year, being sacrificial, being honest, being real about their own finances and the finances of the diocese. We are going to all be a bit weaker, aren't we, at the end of this year? We've all taken quick and decisive actions to try and minimise the impact, and that's been really impressive. But a lot of this is first aid, if you like. Some of it is deferring problems. So we can not spend on housing for a year, but we can't do that next year. And we spend on properties mainly to maintain the value and the quality for the people that live in them. If we had made really big material losses this year, that's investment income lost forever. And that's why we've worked really hard and quite decisively not to make a massive loss this year. Because if we lost £1 million this year, which we could easily have done, that's around about £30,000 of income. That's half a vicar. We'd have lost half a vicar forever if we'd not made some of these savings. So it's been tough. It's been really tough. In 2021, I think some of the stuff coming out about vaccines is just really encouraging, isn't it? It's really hopeful for us that there might be some light at the end of the tunnel. But we've got a way to go in our lives and in our finances. You've made your offers for next year with uncertainty and lots of caveats, but at around £500,000 less than 2 years ago. So our income will be less. And we've put together a holding budget based on that level of income. We are having a reorganisation. We are going to lose some posts, which no one takes any joy in. And some of the activities done by those people won't happen. We won't be spending on capital projects in housing again for the year. And we've just cut our cloth quite, well, even more tightly than normal for next year. We're hoping that the income from our investments won't be massively hit next year. But we don't know for absolute sure. So, Dave, you just gone to the next slide, which is my last slide before we go into questions. So if you haven't typed your questions in yet, feel free to. Just looking at the longer term, just as COVID hit, we were at the latter stages of working out, as a diocese, what was our vision and strategy going forward. The God for All project to 2020 was coming to an end, and the vision was being worked on. And our job at the Diocesan Board of Finance was to work out how to finance and resource that strategy and mission. Obviously, all that work's been rather confused and hard this year because of the coronavirus, but that remains our goal. We've got to put together a longer-term budget that will fund that mission. And what's that mission? Well, an awful lot of it is having clergy in your local churches but also some of the other stuff that we have to do or want to do as well. Bishops' Council have confirmed that stipendiary and local lay ministry is their top priority. I know many people will be glad to hear that, but when something is a top priority and we've got less money coming in, then other things will have to take a lower priority. We are going to be looking at the relationship between the local cost of ministry and how that's funded, and that's fancy language for saying we are going to look at the parish offer system again. I don't believe at all that we'll be going back to a share system, but we will be looking at how we do that in the long term. There'll be lots and lots of consultation and discussion about that before we make any changes, though. As ever, we're looking to build sustainability for our churches around the county. If we compare how we've done to others, we've ridden this storm very well together as a diocese, and that's you really, really doing a fantastic job. And then working together, we've come through this a lot less badly than many dioceses have. But coronavirus has accelerated and highlighted pressures that were already there, and it's highlighted the need to look at them and work on those areas. So we've got a busy year ahead, working out how this is how we go forward from all this. I think that leads us into the any questions section. Yes, it does. Now, I think Dave will host this section. If you have anything you want to ask, you can type it in chat, or you can stick your virtual hand up, as Dave described. Failing that, just wave vigorously. We'll see if Dave's probably going no. Let's see how it goes. I don't know if we've got any questions in so far.
Okay, thanks, Rick. We've just got the one question in at the moment, so I'd really encourage people to type in some questions, having heard what they've heard from Rick. Some more coming through now as well, so thanks for that. Keep them coming. The first from Alistair Norwood, who asks, how much is the £500,000 in relation to the total? I think that refers, Rick, to your probably. Do you want to pick up on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So parish offer in round terms we would have hoped for about £4.5 million. So it's about a ninth. It's been really interesting watching parish offer coming in. We've encouraged you to tell us if you're struggling, or to tell us if you're not going to struggle, and quite a lot of you have done that, which has been really helpful. So we know that some of you are just running out of cash, quite frankly, and you've said to us we can't make our offer this year, and you've cancelled standing orders and everything. And the reality is you've had to do that, and that's been the right thing to do for you. Others have said no, we'll be okay, and we'll keep paying. Every month I look at the figures. For some reason in October we got a lot more than I was expecting, and other months we got a lot less than I'm expecting. So it's very hard to guess, but we think we're going to lose about a ninth. I think someone's already just put 11%. So and interestingly, we get to see across all the other dioceses how that compares. Oh, that's my timer. And we are doing almost bang in the middle of other dioceses, but a bit better than dioceses in the northern half of the country, the northern province. So we're doing better than average, if you like, in the north, which is encouraging and a relief, I guess. But it's a big hit, and we've got that hit to come again next year. What I will do a little bit later is talk about parish offer next year, because that's going to be an interesting journey as well, isn't it? Dave, any others?
Okay, thanks, Rick. One from Andrea Thompson, who asks, can you explain how the £60,000 cost of employment for a vicar is broken down?
Oh, yes, I can. Very fortunately, I always keep by my computer this. Now, some of you will remember this from a year ago. We haven't produced one this year. We've just been too busy. Sorry, that's really bad, is it? It's the financial guide that we produced last year, and we sent them out to all treasurers. It is available on the website, or if you haven't ever seen one and you want one, just email me or Anna. and we can send you a PDF version. But in there, now it's a year out of date, so it's got the breakdown for last year. The logic is, it's not that we pay our vicars £64,000. I'm sure they would love that we did. What that is, it's breaking down how much we pay our clergy, how much pension contributions we have to make for our clergy, how much it costs to house our clergy, how much it costs to train our clergy and to train the next generation of clergy. So what we pay for ordination training, some lay training, how much does it cost to train the laity, and a few other bits and bobs, moving vicars and things like that. Have I missed anything off my list? I think that's it. And if you add up what we pay for all those things, and divide it by the number of clergy in post, it comes out at about £64,000. In effect, it's paying for the stipendiary clergy and their training and the laity, training of the laity, and that's what it is averaged out across the posts. And the figure for House for Duty is about £18,500. So that's how it do it. It's not what they get paid, unfortunately for them. Hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Rick. I saw Archdeacon Lee give the thumbs up when someone thought that they were getting £60,000 of the year payment there. There's Clive Wigley wants to ask a question in person, so please unmute yourself, Clive.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Clive.
Yeah, one of the things for your presentation that hits quite obviously, really, is around Rydal Hall.
Yeah.
You're showing a big loss there, a big chunk from Rydal Hall.
Yeah.
And as you know, I run a number of social enterprises and stuff like that and charities.
Yeah.
And if we were seeing something like that, we were making a real quick decision on what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I.e., is it something that is worth hanging on to? And what I'm concerned about there is that loss is not going to go away. The nature of the business there at Rydal Hall is not going to recover quickly. So is there a plan? Have you thought about a plan to move away from that?
Yeah, we're working. It's a really, really valid question and a very live question, Clive. What I can assure, I mean, we've the Rydal board and monitored by the DBF board as well have been working really hard to mitigate the loss at Rydal. We're going to lose about £250,000 at Rydal. We've saved every penny we could, but you can't just not spend anything on somewhere like that. The financial task force has had a really good long look at Rydal Hall, and the subject of Rydal will be debated at Synod next March. And I won't lie, and this is common knowledge to the people at Rydal, the future of Rydal will be decided at Synod in March, and it's not a simple case of, if coronavirus hadn't hit, Rydal would probably have pretty much broken even this year. It was on course to break even this year, and we were looking to build on that to make it more profitable going forward. We've had some plans in place just to firm up the viability of Rydal Hall. Rydal Hall is about ministry as well as about money, so you can start asking questions about how many vicars is a Rydal Hall worth and things like that, and those are the sorts of debates that are taking place and Synod ultimately will have to consider next March. Shutting and closing Rydal Hall and trying to sell it in itself is a very costly and challenging prospect, but we're not shying away from that as being a possibility. Rydal Hall also has a real place to play in the carbon neutral debate, and that's something that we're trying to get our heads around as well, because it's a very big tick on the green agenda. It's really complicated. It's very much a live issue, Clive, and we're not ducking it. And we will try and present to Synod next March a really honest set of pros and cons and costs of Rydal, and then ultimately Synod will decide whether that's where it wants to spend its money. Thank you. That's helpful.
Hello, Rick. I think I'll come in on that as well. Jim Johnson here. I'm chair of the Board of Finance. Thanks, Clive. The figure that went up of 600,000, in case anybody saw that and logged it in as a deficit, it's not. That's the amount of money that they could have taken against their costs because of close down. So they've lost gross revenue of about 600,000, but it wouldn't have been a loss of 600,000. As Rick says, that's been mitigated up to 250, which is serious, but because of the nature of the business, they've been able to take advantage of furloughing. And of course, quite a lot of the staff are there as part of the community. They're not paid huge wages. And some of them, in fact, were embargoed at Rydal because they couldn't get home. Because when lockdown started, they were from foreign countries, South America and all sorts of places, and they just couldn't go. So they've had to be hunkered down in the place. On the basis of business examination, Rick's absolutely right. They've got a very good board of, yes, volunteers, but people who know their job. It's a separate wholly owned subsidiary of the diocese. And to a degree, they run themselves. They've got a very good business plan. They were looking at turning things round from a difficult period. Good management team, and then COVID struck, and of course now it's struck again, and it is very much in the frame as to what do we do with it. You could think that 30 acres of prime Lake District estate and a lovely great manor house and all the cottages and everything round about it might be worth an absolute fortune. We've had a professional valuation done, which doesn't prove that. There are so many shared services, shared accesses, rights of way through the place, things that need to be done. The capital realization sum would be pathetic. And as I say, we've had a proper professional assessment done of that. We've also asked whether it would be worthwhile selling off some of the bits and keeping some of the bits. And that doesn't apparently make sense because of all the sharing of the services and the rights of way and the tight accesses and whatnot. So it's a bit of a problem just cutting and going. And it went before the Bishop's Council last October, having had a lot of consideration before that. And they just couldn't decide. There are so many pros and so many cons. Are we into cash or are we into mission? If we're into mission, what's the cost? Should we surrender other things in order to prioritise Rydal? The arguments went back and forward. They're very sensible arguments and the difficult ones to answer. And so it'll receive a lot more attention in terms of discussion and looking at options and financial appraisals and business appraisals. The forward bookings are extremely strong. Very few people have asked for their deposits back if we've had to cancel them. There's a huge amount of customer loyalty in there. Against that, as I say, shutting it down would A, cost a lot, and B, not realise a lot. So in a way, you could say the bottom line is we're stuck with it. So if we're stuck with it, we've got to make the best of it. And we do see potential there, but it's by no means an easy argument. Diocesan Synod on the 12th of March will be faced with not just having to take a decision on the future of Rydal, but they'll be given a very good reasoned case of the pros and cons, which will have been worked up beforehand. And let's see what happens then. In the meantime, it's all shut again. Lots of cancellations, but hopefully in the new year, it can be cranking up again. It serves a definitive purpose. And the big argument is, are you better having parish priests in local locations, or are you better having something for broader mission and ministry, which is on neutral territory, effectively?
If you don't, we're very tight on time. I think we're going to have to move on if that's okay.
That, Rick, but I have actually finished.
Right, sorry about that.
Right.
There's a couple more questions. I don't know whether we want to move on or leave those until the final question session, Dave.
If people are happy, I've made a note. If you can leave your hands up, Clive, if you can take your hand down, please, that'd be great. Those who still want to ask questions in person, please leave your hands up, and we'll move on. I think what we've heard from Rick so far demonstrates the difficulties that the diocese has faced fiscally and financially in light of COVID, and I'm delighted to say that one of your Treasury colleagues has provided a film which provides a degree of insight as to the difficulties that are being faced at a parish level. My thanks go to Christina Brentnall. She's Treasurer of St Bridget's Bridekirk near Cockermouth, for this really personal perspective of what she and the congregation she's part of have faced through the coronavirus.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm Treasurer for one of the small rural churches just outside Cockermouth, and I've been asked to do a short presentation to you this evening on how I found our church finances this year. I'm sure this will come as no surprise that it's been unexpected and not quite gone to plan, and I'm sure everybody is feeling the same way about this last year, aren't they? And not just from a church finance perspective. So it's been particularly difficult, I think, for us, as our church only receives about 50% of its regular giving through standing order. So to be suddenly not receiving the weekly plate income was quite a shock to our cash flow situation. And I think it's been cash flow that's been my biggest headache over the last few months. What I've been really encouraged by is our congregation, when I have approached them, have really responded, and I found that really quite heartening and encouraging. But from a time perspective, for me as treasurer, it's obviously been a little bit more work. And I don't know about you, but I don't find it easy to write to people to say, please, can you give us some contributions and so on. That's never an easy thing to do, is it? So the demands of that this year, I think I've found a little bit more challenging. But as I say, our congregation has responded when I've asked, but I have needed to ask a couple of times. So I think going forward, I think I've really learned not to worry about asking, because I know that people will respond with that Christian heart that they do have. So I'd encourage you, if you haven't tried, to write to your congregations. We've obviously had a reduced overhead base with things like electricity, water, heating costs have been lower, so that's been helpful in these challenging financial times. And what I have done is really look at the timing of my gift aid claims and doing things earlier than I would have normally to help with my cash flow. And also, I don't know whether you're in churches that are listed places of worship, but I've also been able to recover through the listed places of worship grant scheme VAT that's recoverable on building spend. And if you're not familiar with that, then I'd certainly have a look at that grant. And usually within about 30 days of putting in an application, you can get money back from them as well. So I find that really helpful. I think for me, it's really just being aware of your overheads that you've got, and when things are coming up that you need to pay for, what you can delay. I know we've managed to postpone our microphone license, for example, because church wasn't in use, so we didn't actually need to be using that. So just little things have helped along the way. And I think just being open and honest with your congregations that we do need help, that we do have these specific overheads that still need to be paid, like the parish share, I don't know, I honestly think that people don't realise that because the church is shut, that we still have things that need to be paid for, you know, like the clergy obviously don't need wages, they don't need their living costs. I think it's just silly things like that that people don't naturally think of, but as I say, they are absolutely willing to help when you ask. So my encouragement to all of you would be ask and you will receive. And yeah, I think that would be my main encouragement going forward. Thank you. Bye.
So as Dave said before, our thanks go to Christina for taking the time to film that message for us. And I'm sure a lot of what she said chimes with you all and your experiences over the last few months. And she has offered, if anyone's got any questions about anything she mentioned, she's more than happy for people to get in touch with her. And share experience. She can't be here this evening, but she said she's happy for people to get in touch with her otherwise. So we're really grateful to her for that. So for those of you I've not met, I'm Anna. I'm holding down the fort for Sophie in the Stewardship Enabler role, providing maternity cover. But you may have also come across me. I support the work of the DAC, and I also support Dave in comms sometimes. So you may have come across me in one of my many hats for the diocese. But I'm here today to talk about stewardship with you all. So firstly, I'm going to go through some best practices. Some of you may be doing all of these already, and that's great. Some of you are new to the role and won't have seen this list before. And for some of you, it might just be a helpful refresher. So I'll run through these, then we're going to chat about what I can do to support you, particularly in light of how stewardship might work practically with COVID and lockdowns and so on. And then last of all, I'm going to talk to you about an exciting development we've asked to be involved in by the National Giving team and how that's going to help you bring in some new cash flow. As Dave's just popped in the chat, we've got time for questions and answers at the end of this session as well. So please do keep typing them in, raising your hands, and we can go back to some of the earlier ones as well. So we'll have time at the end of this. So looking at stewardship best practices, this is a list of best practices and principles and so on that you should be doing within your churches and parishes. Firstly, it's really important, and I'm sure most of you are aware of this, to work with your clergy and to get them on board with stewardship and giving and the financial messages in your churches, to get them regularly preaching on the topic. For preaching series, for many of the other things I'm going to talk about, we've got a huge variety of resources available on the website or links to other places where there are resources available. So I'd really encourage you to make the most of them. We're trying to make the website as useful as possible to you with all the resources on there. So really make use of that. That feeds into running stewardship programs regularly. So encouraging people to think about their giving and how that benefits the mission and ministry of the church. And part of that is the annual reviews of giving. So that's where you can write to givers, ask them to review and hopefully increase what they give, and really tell them how their gifts impact what the church can do. It's always great to include kind of good news stories or case studies of how money has been really used to move the church's work forward. And separately to that, you should also thank your givers. So we recommend you do that at a different time to asking them to review their giving. This just needs to be a lovely, thankful letter to them for all they allow you to do. Do that once a year, and people will really appreciate that. And it's a really good way for people to keep their giving in mind. Some parishes, some of you will have legacy policies in place, some of you won't, but it's a nice easy win to have a legacy policy, so that if a legacy is given, you are able to make the most use of it. You don't have to think about how are we going to spend this. You've already made all of those decisions. And a couple of other really easy practical wins. Firstly is claiming gift aid or Gads, so the gift aid small donation scheme, wherever possible. I'm sure the majority of you here will be doing that, but if not, there's lots of guides and tips and tricks on the website, as I've already mentioned, that can help you with that process. What I will mention here is some of the rules around Gads have changed in light of lockdown. So if at the end of this 4 weeks, for example, someone says, I've got 4 weeks worth of envelope giving saved up, that may amount to over the £30 cap that usually sits on Gads, but you can treat those saved up donations as individual ones and claim Gads on them all. So it's really worthwhile making use of that change in rules that the government has announced in light of churches and other charities maybe not receiving the regular income in the way they usually would. The other really easy practical win is making use of the parish buying scheme. So if you've not registered on the parish buying website, I'd recommend you do that. The National Giving team have worked really hard to get a load of discounts available to churches right across the country. There's things like audio-visual equipment if you're streaming services, PPE, but also various other things that you can access through that website, and they'll have discounts for you there. And finally, the last best practice that I want to mention is the idea of stewardship audits. So maybe if you're new to the role and you're not sure where your PCC or the churchgoers are kind of at mentally with stewardship, where your giving comes from, it's always worth conducting an audit and looking at what do you do well, what could you improve, areas to prioritise. When was a stewardship programme last run, for example, and that means you can work out your priorities moving forward in terms of stewardship. And it also means that if you'd like me to support you, I can offer the most relevant support because I know what you particularly want to focus on. If we could just move on to the next slide, please, Dave. That's great. So looking at how I can support you. So some of this is going to be a bit different to how Sophie may have done things pre-COVID when she was able to come and meet with you physically. So there's obviously a lot more over Zoom, just like tonight, but that doesn't mean that stewardship has to stop. So I can still meet with you and your PCCs. I can offer training in those best practices and we can go into them all in more detail. And I can also support the stewardship audit process. And if you were to decide that you maybe wanted to run a stewardship campaign in spring next year, when hopefully there's some more normality, I can offer training and support in those stewardship programs and practically talk you through the different things that are involved and help you in that as you're running them. There's 3 big items that I've been focused on, or I am focusing on. So firstly, online giving. I'm sure lots of you will have heard about the Diocesan platform that we've had running since June. Kind of one of the last things that Sophie did before she went on her maternity leave was to get that going. And I'm very grateful for all her work on that and handing that over to me. We've now got over 80 churches signed up with pages, and I think nearly £7,000 has now been donated. So it's been really successful as a new way for churches to bring money in, and we've seen some really generous donations through that. If you have an online giving page and would like more support in maybe how to promote it or encourage its use, please get in contact with me. If you want an online giving page, it's not too late. You can still register for one. And again, just pop me an email. Hopefully, I'll pop my email in the chat in a little bit, and then you've all got it in case you need it. I'll talk to you about contactless giving in a moment, which maybe hints at what the national giving team is asking us to be involved with. But the other big work that I'm doing at the minute is focusing on legacy giving. And actually we're jumping kind of on the bandwagon of the national giving team. They're doing loads of work around legacy giving. So we're making use of their expertise and sharing all that with you, sharing resources so that you can learn from them at the same time as we are, but really focusing on that. Hopefully most of you already receive the stewardship e-news that I send out quarterly, and also the Diocesan e-news, and I'll use both of them to share any great opportunities. So that might be grants or resources or training opportunities. There have been lots of webinars and Zoom meetings and so on with training over lockdown, and it's really great to try and engage with them and make use of what's on offer. So keep your eyes peeled on both the stewardship and the Diocesan e-news for anything that kind of comes your way. But most importantly, I'm here to support you in your role. So that might be sharing resources, and there's some on the screen that will be of use to you. But I'm here to help you. That might be with online giving. But whatever you need, you can email me. And if I don't know the answer, hopefully I know someone that will. But support you in your stewardship activities in your church. Stewardship is kind of owned by each of you in your church. It's not all on me or all on Sophie when she comes back. We're here to enable you to do your stewardship work. But I'm now going to talk to you about contactless giving and a really exciting opportunity. So we have been asked by the National Giving Team to work in partnership with them on a pilot project all to do with contactless giving. Some of you will have heard that they had a pilot scheme planned for this autumn, where they were going to hand out free kit to 50% of churches in the UK. Because of COVID, that's all changed, and what's now actually happening is we in the diocese are doing that pilot scheme ourselves, and you will all have the opportunity to get a free bit of contactless giving kit, and have a bit of kit in your church to make use of. So Dave, if you could just pop, there we go. So it's a really exciting opportunity to be involved in this, and to be the diocese in the country that gets to do this. It's a safe giving method, but it's a really good way to increase giving, particularly maybe if you've got lots of visitors or people who don't necessarily or aren't carrying cash at the minute with COVID. It's a really good way to bring some income into your church. So this is still the early stages, so we've not got lots and lots of details firmed up, but the important thing is there will be contactless units offered to all churches in the diocese, and these will be free of charge. We will support you through working out what units are going to be the best fit for your churches, and we'll also offer training in how to use them, and how to use them to their full potential. And that will be both us and the national team working and supporting you with that. So you're not just going to get a bit of kit and be left alone with it. We're really going to help you make the most of that. So the rollout process will begin in January and February, and the first part of it is working out which piece of kit is going to be the best fit for your church. But the aim is that all the units will be with you by Easter, so you can make the most of them. Hopefully churches, there may be some sort of normality. So that's the aim. So Dave, if you could just flick to the next slide. So there's going to be 3 units. I'm not going to go into great detail on these. We will share the slides with you, so you can read more about them. But the units you'll see on screen are just examples. These aren't definitely the units that will be used in the trial. So that's why I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail. But there will be 3 choices. The first one is a portable unit. This would require an internet connection, but that doesn't have to be Wi-Fi. It can be phone signal. So this one is a small unit. It can be passed around, but it can't be secured to a building, for example. So Dave, if we could move to the second one. The second option can be secured. Again, it would require internet connection, but this one maybe would work if you are a church that gets lots of visitor footfall in normal times. So once we've got visitors back in buildings more often, they can really make use of this. It could be fixed to a wall, for example. And then if we move on to the third option, for those churches who can't get Wi-Fi or phone signal, because we know there are some of you that are in that situation, there will be an option available that can process transactions without that. Essentially what you have to do is people donate, and then maybe once a week the unit's taken somewhere where there is signal to kind of process all those donations at a later date. But we would talk through all these practicalities with you whilst we're running the pilot. As I said, we've not got set units yet. We're still making those decisions. So that's why I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail on the different options. But we wanted to launch it tonight, even without some of that detail, because it is a really exciting opportunity we've been asked to be part of with the National Giving Team. And it's a really good way that you can all benefit from contactless giving. So I'm going to hand back to Dave, who's going to chair the next question and answer session. If anyone's got questions on contactless or on stewardship more generally, I'm happy to answer them, but I know we've also got maybe some from earlier that we need to go back to. So over to you, Dave.
Thanks very much, Anna. John Tyndale's had his hand up for a long time, so maybe John, if you just want to ask your question. John, you're on mute.
Thanks, Dave. Hi, my question is this. National government has given a lot of support to the furlough scheme. Do you, Rick, know of anything that's in the system or anything that might support churches? For example, reducing the gift aid allowance from 25 pence in the pound to say 35 pence in the pound for a year. Because, you know, is there anything that you're hearing from the national scene?
I think there's very little. I think there's a sense that the church is not being prioritised in the government's response to coronavirus. The national church are trying really hard to respond, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. There has been some sort of heritage type grant money given out in the last month or so, and a number of buildings in Carlisle Diocese have benefited from that, but they do tend to be the more prestigious heritage buildings. I've not heard anything around other than concession on the small gift, the Gads limit on sort of catch-up payments, which is helpful. I've not heard much in terms of concession. National Church are lobbying really, really hard to try and be on the radar of the government in terms of money. Some church halls have been able to get some grant money to make up for loss of income, but there's not a lot out there. Every now and then we get an email around what is there, but there's not much. I wouldn't say we've been forgotten, but we're not high on the agenda, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John. If you could lower your hand, that'd be great. Thank you. Just some questions that have come through on the chat and some general comments. One from Tony, who maybe Rick. Tony asks, will sustainability assessments be linked to the Rosette initiative?
Oh, I was hoping I was going to get to answer Tony's later question, because I could do that one. I don't know. The Rosette system's around properties, isn't it? I know very little about that. I'm afraid I'm going to pass that one because I don't know. I'd be guessing. Sorry. Okay. There's a question from Tony later about monthly fees and contactless and things like that. And I know a bit about that and merchant fees. And I might know a little bit more than Anna because I've been asking the same questions. Do you want me to address those?
Yeah, please do. And what I would say is,
lack of knowledge.
What I would say is, if there is a question that we can't answer, we will come back to you guys with the answers. So please be assured that we will do that.
Yeah.
Rick, answer the question you can.
Absolutely. There's a couple of questions about the costs of the on the contactless scheme. And I think a few of you are very much coming from the there's no such thing as a free lunch approach. This is very much work in progress, and we don't know the full details of the scheme. Any contactless giving will attract a merchant fee, but because they're trying to do this at national level, they're trying to negotiate a really low fee. Most of your contactless giving, we think, will be extra giving, extra money. So if you do end up paying 1% as a merchant fee, you're still getting 99% of new money. So I think it's still really worth doing. There's a question about monthly fees, and my understanding is there won't be a monthly fee, or certainly not for the first couple of years. Because there's no point trying to encourage you to do this if actually you're worried about losing money by having them. And the whole point of the scheme is to try and give you free equipment with no strings attached, because it might make you brave enough to try it. I mean, for 2 years I've been looking at these jolly things thinking, oh, we should do this, but it's not quite the right one. What's the package? Will it work? Oh, how will we use it? We're being given this on a plate with loads of support, loads of training, and free equipment and no fees for at least 2 years, I believe and hope. And I really hope that all of you will work with us to work out what's the best one to put in your churches and how to maximise the money. Because if you think about all the people that come in for weddings and funerals and they haven't got cash in their pockets, all the tourists that come into your building and they haven't got cash in their pockets, that's what the National Church really believes. And they've got lots of churches where this has worked fabulously. So watch this space for the detail, but I don't think you've got much to lose and you could gain quite a lot. So I'd love to see these in all of our churches by Easter, for the reopening of our churches for the summer. I hope and pray.
Okay, thanks, Rick. I just want to pick up on a comment from Tricia, which is really important. Tricia points out that she lip reads, so everybody who's talking, can they be as well lit as possible, please, in order that Tricia is able to lip read. So we'll endeavour to do that. I've got a light on, Tricia. Just to pick up on a few other questions that are coming in and comments. Jim Johnson makes the comment about parish buying and the fact that through the use of parish buying, that can save a lot on energy costs. It's simple to enrol and use. And I know that certainly in the e-news in past editions, we've highlighted the parish buying resources that are available and signposted people to those to help with energy costs.
And I think it's worth mentioning, I think I'm right in saying this, and this will link to when Rick brings up the kind of carbon neutral by 2030 later. I think all of the energy suppliers on parish buying are green energy suppliers. So if you're looking to move in that direction, it's well worth looking on parish buying for them.
Thanks, Anna. Just to go back to some earlier questions, if that's okay, Rick, from the first session, and we talked about the breakdown. I presume this is the breakdown of clergy costs. A question from Robert Cass is about pension contributions as a percentage of salaries. Robert questions how he believes them to be exceptionally high. Why is this? I think it's around 40%. I don't know whether you have an insight on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We, like pretty much anyone who has an old-fashioned style pension fund with enormous deficits, is having to work very hard to swap those up. Pre-COVID, we were looking at them coming down fairly soon. Clergy pension is really tricky because our clergy, as they approach retirement, probably haven't got a house. So we do need to provide for these men and women. They've given up an awful lot in their lives. They've worked themselves into the ground, and we need to honour that by providing for them in retirement, particularly if they are unlikely to have a house. It is a really high percentage to pay, but it's not dissimilar to what similar pension schemes out there are having to pay to make up the deficits, etc., that have accumulated. It's all done, under regulation, actuaries and under the regulators, etc. It is being reviewed. There is a group in London who are looking at clergy pensions going forward to see whether it is fit for purpose, etc. But 40% is not particularly unusual for a scheme of that style. But yeah, it costs an awful lot of money. It does.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Just a note from Ian Graham, who says he'd recommend a general appeal in the parish magazine rather than sending out individual letters. I think this touches on something that you talked about in terms of stewardship, Anna. I don't know whether you want to come back on that. What I would say, funnily enough, is the lady who appeared in the film earlier, Christina Brentnall. I've filmed with Christina previously alongside Sophie, and she actually did do individual letters to the local community in and around Bridekirk, which had hugely favourable results. But Anna, I don't know whether you want to pick up on that. Yeah,
so it depends on your audience, I guess. For some people, individual letters are what is going to work best. So we've really encouraged people to send individual letters to congregations during lockdown as a way of keeping in touch, both kind of on a personal level, but also to do with financial or other matters. But if you're maybe appealing to wider community, then maybe something in a parish magazine is a better way forward. So obviously, I'm not going into huge detail tonight on the practicalities of kind of these annual reviews or stewardship programs. But if I was to do stewardship training with you, we would talk through things like that and the different ways you can reach different audiences, because obviously everything needs to be kind of personalised to fit what works for your church or your parish when you're doing stewardship work.
Thanks, Anna. Some question, a few more questions. Clive, I know your hand's up. If we don't get to you in this session, we'll get to you in the third Q&A, so please bear with me. A question from Andrea Thompson, who asks, have you considered PCI DSS compliance?
We haven't talked about it yet. It's not fun, is it? I don't know. It needs, for those who don't know, which is probably most of you, there is a certain amount, a little bit of regulation around this that you have to go through if you have a merchant account. I haven't had that conversation with the National Church, but we will strive really hard to not make this a barrier or make it very difficult for you if you have to do anything at all. I don't know.
Okay, thanks. Just a final quick question before we move on. This from Tim Naylor, again with regards to contactless. Do you know if I will be able to identify the giver and claim gift aid, not Gads?
So some of that depends on the device, is my understanding. Some devices have an option where people can kind of fill in gift aid declarations. As I said, the exact devices that are going to be used in the trial aren't confirmed, so I can't necessarily say for definite. Rick may know more on this than me. Sorry if I've dropped you in it there, Rick, if you don't.
That's right. I think that it's very unusual to be able to do gift aid, specific gift aid on contactless. You may know more than me in terms of if any of the units do it, but contactless does come within the Gads system, doesn't it, Anna, I believe. So you won't know who's given, but I'm pretty sure that you can include it in your Gads claim. So as long as you're under your limit, I guess if you're a big tourist church, you might hit your limit, but you can claim it under the Gads. I'm pretty sure on that. We'll confirm.
That's one of the things that, as we get more details and units confirmed and so on, a lot of this will be clarified and confirmed. So it's a bit of a wait and see, I'm afraid, at the minute.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for those questions. There'll be opportunity for further questions towards the end, but now I think it's time for some collective prayer, because we need to try and break out into small breakout groups. So fingers crossed that the technology works. Over to you, Rick.
Right, okay. So we thought long and hard about this, but a lot of the feedback that we got when we did the Pea and Pie Suppers last year was that people really appreciated just a bit of a natter with other treasurers, and comparing experiences and that kind of thing. So with the marvel of Zoom, it allows us to go into small breakout groups, and it really is a chance for you just to stop hearing our voices, and talk with each other in a small group about what your how your year's been going. We've got a few questions that you might like to talk about, but you don't have to. It's really just to share experiences and to encourage one another. We've all been stuck at home, haven't we, for so long. We just thought it'd be nice for you to get a chance to talk with other treasurers. We're not going to impose many rules, but I would say, because we always get some people are more talkative and some are a bit shy. So try, if you're the talkative type, please try and make sure that others in your group get a chance to talk if they want to, but you don't have to if you don't want to. And what we will do at the end of the 20 minutes, I think we flash up a warning that you're going to go back to the main group or something like that, and I think you have to say yes. is if one of you could just grab a pen and paper and just scribble down any points that you or the group find it interesting or helpful. And tomorrow or over the next few days, if you could email myself or Anna, it's just a little summary. It could be just a couple of sentences or an 8-page essay, I don't mind. But just, we're not recording the small group, so you can say anything you like. And it would just be interesting to get any feedback that you might want us to be aware of. So on the next slide, 3 things that you might like to discuss amongst you is what are the what positive things has your church found during the COVID experience? It could be around money, it could just be around church life in general. What are the positives that you spotted? What's your PCC's chief concern going forward at this moment in time, and how are you looking to address it? And are there any ways that the diocese can support your stewardship activities? So I think if we can get the magic, we'll ping those into your group as well. But as I say, if you go off piste and end up talking about other stuff, that's fine. So I'm hoping that Dave will be able to push a button and you'll find yourself being invited into a small group, and then in about 20 minutes, we'll all reconvene. So have a good natter. And we're not listening, so you can say whatever you want. Dave, I'm praying. I really hope you enjoyed and found that helpful, because I think you can listen to me waffling on for a while, but you can only take so much. I hope that you've been able to share your experiences and encourage each other a little bit about what's going on in your local parish. I would love to hear from you about what's been said, ideas, suggestions around those 3 questions or whatever. My email is at the bottom there. If you don't fancy spelling my name, you can also do it to finance@carlisle.diocese.org.uk, or send it to stewardship or whatever. But we'd love to hear back from you if you're able. So we're going to move on now. Dave, if you're able to ping on to the next slide. I'm just going to spend about 10 minutes just giving you a quick update on a few national things and a few what I'm calling housekeeping-y type things around church house and year end and parish offer and things like that. I don't have a huge amount to say in terms of national and other issues. The national church have obviously, like your parishes, like the diocese, like charities and companies around the world, have been getting to grips with what's going on. An awful lot of their income is investment income, so they'll have been working exceptionally hard to keep that going. They don't rely, I think, massively on regular givers or one-off donations and the like. So in some ways that's not been affected so much, but they things like the pension deficits and the like, they'll be very much concerned about that and how that's being impacted. They have been working very hard to support dioceses. Liquidity was a big issue for some dioceses very early on. As I said before, we were very fortunate that we just sold a few properties. We weren't going to run out of cash, but some were, and so they've been working really hard with certain dioceses. They also have set aside money to issue as grants to dioceses who are finding it particularly tough. We've put a claim in today to try and get some money from that. I'll be honest, we have done a lot better than some, and so they will view our grant application in the light of how we've done compared to others. But we do hope we'll get some money, which really will be toward some of the work we've got to do next year to keep going and to put ourselves in the best possible position. They were already putting a lot of effort and money into more activity around stewardship. So we're working with them in a number of ways. We've already mentioned the Contactless Giving initiative. We've got at least one other area we're working with them. But they're also really trying to start at the ordinand training and upwards, so that new trainee clergy will be much better informed and trained in terms of areas like stewardship. So the National Church is they are trying really hard to support where they can. That's probably all I can say on that. A quick update for those that were on the Pea and Pie Supper tour last year. We talked about are PCCs all going to be made to register as fully fledged charities. Most of you are accepted charities, which means you don't have a charity number, but you are a charity. And boy, doesn't that cause confusion when you talk to your bank or apply for whatever. Overall, it will be a pain if you have to fully register, because it'll be more admin, more hoops to jump through. The National Church have lobbied really hard not to make you have to do that. That's with the government at the moment. They believe that's going to be kicked into the medium-term grass, which I think is what I said last year, but we're nearer the announcement. But coronavirus and Brexit have put a lot of things on hold. But we believe that that's not going to be an imminent thing for us to worry about. One thing that is going to be a big thing for us all to think about is the Church's commitment to being carbon neutral, carbon zero by 2030. Synod surprised us all a bit earlier this year, National Synod, by bringing the target forward to 2030. It's a really, really good thing to do, but it's going to be a hard thing to do. I think this will really appeal to younger people, that the Church is taking this seriously, but it's going to impact on us locally, for you, particularly around your buildings and your energy use and the like, and at diocesan level, both in terms of buildings and our policies, travel, meetings, all sorts of things are going to come under the spotlight to see how we're doing. We have a few aces up our sleeve. We have, many of you know, investment in 2 hydro schemes already, which give us lots of money when it rains, which is great, but they're also obviously a big tick on the carbon neutral agenda. Ryder Hall itself and the grounds there is also a really good thing in that area. But yeah, we've got a lot of work to do. We've got some really good experts who are giving their time for free to lead this project. And I'm actually quite excited about this, but I'm also quite daunted about the practicalities and the cost of it. So very much watch this space, but we will try and guide you through it in the years ahead. I won't say a great deal on grants and VAT. There's not a lot of grant money out there at the moment. We will try and continue to support you through the stewardship team, and also Jane Potts at the Cumbria Trust for Churches. I always get that the wrong way around, particularly around listed buildings. But if you have big capital projects, do get in touch with us, because we've got some people who do know what they're talking about, unlike me, who can try to help you in that direction. The VAT scheme on the listed place of worship, if you don't know, if you're a listed building and you're doing capital work, you can generally claim the VAT back, but it's not a right. You have to claim fairly, I would encourage, claim quickly and often. You don't have to wait till the end of the project. And it's a lump sum that they have every year, and when they run out, they run out. And the extension, I think, was to 2021, so the government will have to approve it going forward again. And who knows what money is not going to be available next year. So I'm a little nervous about that one, I must be honest, but who knows? Don't know. Those are the main national issues I could think of. You feel free to ask questions in the chat facility. And then I'll just, the last couple of minutes before we go over to questions, just a few housekeeping-y type things. Church House is still closed, which is why I'm in my spare room, as are most of the staff. We have a very small presence going in and out of Church House to look after post and that sort of thing, but we are pretty much all working from our homes. So please bear with us. I owe at least 10 of you phone calls or emails, some going back several months. I'll be honest, we're still catching up. We're all pretty shattered, those that weren't furloughed. We're counting the days to Christmas. We're doing our best, and be gracious with us because it's quite tough. We're trying to keep all the plates spinning. I'm really proud of what the team have been able to do to keep things going over the summer. But we are having to do a few things a bit differently and maybe a bit more slowly. We're having to do a lot more by email than posts, and some of you don't particularly like emails, and sometimes it goes into your spam filter. So that can be a bit of a challenge. We might be a bit slower responding to certain things. Bear in mind that some stuff is still held on paper files in Church House, particularly around trusts and your investments with CCLA that come to us. So we may be a bit slow coming back to you on that. The year-end work around your trust statements, if you get those from us, will almost certainly be slower, because we'll probably get them later, because we can't do them until CCLA send them to us. CCLA are mainly working from home as well, so I suspect it will take longer this year. We promise that we will turn them around and get them out to you as soon as we get them, but it might be early February. We always get a couple of phone calls on about the 3rd of January saying, where are they? So please be patient. We are still banking checks, so someone goes in every Friday. So if you're paying us parish offer or fees or whatever by check, that's fine. We will still process those. Just a quick request to get up to date if you possibly can with the parish offer payments. We closed the door officially at the end of January for the year, but particularly because we're working from home, if you have stuff to send us, the earlier the better, just to give us a chance. If you haven't had weddings and funerals and you've got lots of periods where you didn't do anything, please do send us a nil return. It can just be an email that says we haven't had any, or we didn't have any in these months, and that's all we need to know. But we do audit them every year, and our auditors sometimes look at them. So please do email us, even if you've had nothing, just to confirm that. 2021 parochial fees have just been published by the National Church, so we'll be emailing out in the next week or two those to you. We'll redo the forms, etc. They'll all be on the website as well, in Excel form, in PDF form, etc. So it'll be business as usual. I think we post them normally, don't we? But we'll be emailing this year, again, because we're not in Church House. And finally, the last thing I've got to say is around Parish Offer. Thank you so much for all the work you did around setting your 2021 Parish Offer. It's really hard, and you've responded magnificently in the work that you've done. And we know it was a big ask. So thank you so much for doing that. And we also know you've done it in faith that it's as good as you could do, guessing what was going to happen next year. And we're all in that boat. And things might be better next year than we hoped, or they might be worse than we hoped. And we just don't know. And we know that it will be a journey through next year. If you're able to do standing order for all of it or some of it, please do, because we have to pay our clergy every month, so we do need cash flow coming in. Even just getting standing order forms is not signed, is not that easy this year, is it, for some of you? If you can do it on internet banking or just write into your own bank with the right signatures on, that's fine, but let us know. If you're setting it up yourself, please quote the P reference. If you imagine we get about 200 to 300 payments every month for this, and if it just says St Mary's, it's a bit of a challenge to know whose it is. So we know you're doing your best, and we also know that next year we might come out in March and say, now we know a bit more about where we're at, is your offer still the same? But we're just going to play it by ear, and you'll have to play it by ear depending on how quickly we recover from this and what your cash flows are doing. So it's going to be a journey. I hope we can do it together as partners in this, partners in mission. I nearly said partners in crime, partners in mission. You know, to do what we can do to keep maximising the ministry that we can do in our communities. So that's all the housekeeping. I've promised to finish for Dave for I'm a Celebrity, so I've only got 4 minutes. But if you do have questions, then wallop them into chat or push the button that puts your hand in the air or wave vigorously. Do we have any questions from before that were left, Dave? I can't remember.
Yeah, so if Clive is still with us, I don't know if you are with us, Clive, but you had your hand up. So if you'd like to ask the question, Clive, I can't see it. Are you there? No, I think Clive's gone. We've got one final question from the chat.
No, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I got stuck with the buttons. I couldn't press it quick enough. Sorry,
okay.
Dan.
Fire away.
Yeah, it's just a quick one, really. I did have two, but I'll just do the one, just a quickie. One of the things that was said is about writing out to people asking for more money. And I'm really worried about that. I mean, I personally couldn't do that at the moment because I'm very aware of most of the population is suffering. And we've got to be aware that people are losing their jobs out there. They're suffering from mental health issues. And right now, they really need the church to have some sympathy around those things. And I think the last thing people need is a letter dropping through the post saying, give us more money for the church. The only way we could do that in a reasonable way is, in my mind, is to phrase it in such a way that we're supporting people. And I think it's dangerous just to sort of say to treasurers, go out there, and if you ask for more money, it will be given. I think we've got the church has to think about how we support people now. And a better message would be to go out to people and say, look, if you're struggling now, then, you know, we can help by taking less now. And then, you know, when you come back, we can look at that in a different way. That's just my view. I find it a little bit difficult if we're talking about trying to get more money out of people all the time, particularly at the moment. So I'm sorry about that view, but that's what it is.
No, that's great. A really good point. Well made. Thanks very much for that, Clive. The final question, if I can throw towards Archdeacon Lee, comes from Deborah Walker, who this referred to Rick's very first presentation, I think, and Deborah talks about feeling like the situation that we're in at the moment is less like first aid, more like crisis management for PCCs. They're due to have a quinquennial next year and can't afford it. Can they defer?
That's a really good question, and I absolutely understand the reasoning behind that. I think what we'd say is we took the decision this year to postpone the quinquennials that were due this year. That decision hasn't been taken again for next year as a blanket thing, but I would just encourage anybody, any church that's struggling whose quinquennial is due, just to speak to your archdeacon, just present the case, and we'll be really sympathetic. So again, we'll do that on an individual case-by-case basis.
Great, thanks a lot, Lee. That kind of brings us to an end.
There's one really quick question just popped up, and I'll just answer it in 10 seconds. It talks about, is there any money from the diocese or national church around the carbon neutral initiatives? That's a really good question. That's the question we asked the national church in March, saying, are you going to give us any money to help? They are working on it. We are working on it. I think the really good thing is that churches, councils, so many people are on the carbon neutral journey that I think there will be a very collaborative approach to it. Whether that turns into money coming our way to help us, I don't know. But we will be working really hard that this doesn't just become a really big deal for people. I don't know where it's going to go. We've got 10 years to work it out, but we're working pretty hard on it already. If there is money available, I promise we will try and get it. Because, you know, you're not sitting on lots of money, are you? So, yeah, I hope so. Sorry, Dave.
Thanks, Rick. You just meant that I've missed the start of I'm a Celebrity. Thanks for that. Without any further ado, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's joined tonight. Thank you so much for your contributions this evening. And now just over to Archdeacon Lee first for some closing prayers, and then Rick.
Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, thank you for the gift of this technology that's allowed us to meet this evening. Thank you, Lord, for every treasurer who's been part of this meeting and for the gifting that they offer to you and to their parish and community. Thanks to the finance team, to Dave in comms, to all who contribute to the life, joy and grace of your church in this county. We do give you great thanks. And Lord, as we now leave this virtual meeting, we pray that you would give us peace in our hearts. Pray too, Lord, that you would give us a good night's rest, and when we wake in the morning, we would rejoice and praise your name, and pray too that Dave enjoys I'm a Celebrity. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll let you all go now. If you've got questions or comments or thoughts, please do email me. And just thank you so much for all you do. You're a fantastic bunch of treasurers. You do an amazing job. So thank you and good night.
Thank you.
It's the Zoom way. Yay.